Good evening, members of the gallery, councillors and staff. I declare the September OCM open at 7 p.m. and welcome you all this evening. I acknowledge the Noongar people of the Budja, the land that we gather on this evening. For thousands of years, their connection to country has provided knowledge, guidance, spirituality and life. We pay our respects to this ongoing connection as well as to their elders past, present and emerging. This evening you'll notice that there is a camera above you and we've also got screens on each councillor and executive manager's desk. So under the changes to the Local Government Act 1995, we are required to live stream meetings. Tonight's meeting will be both audio and visually recorded. The lectern has been replaced with a table and chair for improved accessibility for those that will be speaking. A ceiling mounted camera is in place, and while the camera will be on, it is just to test the equipment ahead of the official launch. There have also been improvements to the speaker system to enhance the gallery's experience. If you are taking a public question or making a statement this evening or a deputation, we request that you take a seat at the table. Members of the public are also reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any means is allowed. That brings us to agenda item number 1, which is attendance and apologies. There are no apologies. Agenda item 2 is public question time. 2.1 is response to previous public questions taken on notice. The questions asked by Mrs Bond, by Mrs Vanessa Reynolds, will be responded to and will appear within the agenda and minutes of tonight's meeting. That brings us to agenda item 2.2, which is public questions. Public questions time will commence at 7:02 p.m. and I ask Mrs Mary Harris of Serpentine to come forward and ask her question.
I must congratulate Council on improved PA system. Thank you. My question relates to LPP 1.5 and I'm a little confused about when development applications will be referred to main roads. So when making an application for a farm gate stall, will all development applications that pertain to the major roads that have been named within the exempted amendment be referred to main roads?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Harris. I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide an answer.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for the question, Ms Harris. So Main Roads Western Australia would be referred applications where those applications abut their primary regional roads, being South Western Highway or Thomas Road within the Shire. While Tonkin Highway is also a primary regional road, it is a controlled access highway where no properties directly take access. So the other listed roads include other regional roads such as Anketel Road and Mundajong Road, and they would be required to be referred to the Department for Planning, Lands and Heritage for comment.
Thank you for the answer, Director. Thank you for your question, Mrs Harris.
Thank you.
Council has received no other questions on notice. I will now open the floor to anyone from the public gallery who would like to come forward and ask a question. Mrs Bond. Mrs Bond, do you have a question?
I do. But as you can see, I had to prepare myself. How many telecommunications towers have been erected in the Shire How many applications are pending? How many are erected close to homes, playgrounds, reserves and businesses, and how many are 100 metres or less from these listed areas?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Bond, or the 5 questions I think there was. We'll take that question on notice and provide an answer in due course. Did you have another question, Mrs Bond?
When are the lights on the intersection of Abernethy and Hopkinson Road going to be erected, and what is the total cost?
Again, thank you for the question, Mrs Bond. We will take that question on notice and answer will be provided in due course. Would you like to ask a third question?
What, if any, action has been initiated regarding the talk fest about the Watkins Road tip, and how much of the $40,000 approved at the OCM in August by 4 councillors has been spent, and what is the breakdown?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Bond. I'm wondering whether the Director of Infrastructure Services would like to take that on notice, Director? Yep. That question will be taken on notice, Mrs Bond, and will provide an answer in due course. Thank you for your questions. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you. That being the case, question time is concluded at 7:07 p.m. That brings us on to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is public statement time. Public statement time will now commence at 7:07 p.m. and I'll ask Mr Scott Hambley from the Serpentine Golf Club to please come forward and make his statement.
Thank you, Mr President. The members of the Serpentine Golf Club would like to acknowledge the support the Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire Council has provided for our clubhouse upgrade project. Our club is a non-for-profit community-based association that provides an important facility for our members and the general public. Our course provides the opportunity for everyone to engage in activities that improve physical, mental and social well-being at a low cost. Excuse me. The proposed improvements to our old and substandard clubhouse will allow the club to ensure the viability of its future and the benefit to the SJ community. I'd like to thank Rebecca Steinke and Jason Parker for their valuable assistance with the preparation of the Community Sports and Recreation Facilities Fund application. And our members look forward to the successful completion of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hambley. I'd now like to invite Margaret Carla from Ardilla to come forward and make your statement.
Good evening, councillors. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the Shire officers on their vision. This is regarding agenda item 10.19, the update regarding the draft master plan for Lot 500 Lampeter Road in Mardella. So I'd like to congratulate the officers on their vision for this piece of land known as Webb Reserve. It's one of the last remaining parcels of land that the Shire owns of a suitable size and with easy accessibility necessary for the future development of a first-class equine facility. A facility which has the potential to support not just the local equine community, but to attract visitors and competitors from much further afield. I'm greatly encouraged by the Shire's demonstration of faith and commitment to our large equine community, which makes up a substantial part of rural Serpentine Jarrahdale. With appropriate planning, the Webb Reserve could become a centre of excellence for many equine pursuits and also a multi-purpose event venue.
Construction of suitable permanent sheds, pavilions and structures would cater for many other uses, such as seminars, workshops, canine competitions, poultry shows, trade fairs and other similar pursuits, which with good planning might be held simultaneously and without any conflict. Serpentine Jarrahdale is a comfortable drive from the city, and facilities such as these would only encourage and enhance visitor experiences within our shire. With anticipated changes to climate and the increased severity of extreme weather conditions, permanent multi-use shelters and pavilions, storage space on the Webb Reserve might also provide a home for the growing and popular Mundajong Farmers Market, a market which is possibly unique in the metropolitan area due to the fact that stallholders are the actual local producers of the goods sold. A market which currently struggles with confined space, parking constraints and the time-consuming and labour-intensive erection of temporary shelters every week of the year. The future of the SJ Food and Farm Festival and possible other similar events would be enhanced with the availability of a local multi-use venue and permanent storage sheds, removing the need for the temporary marquees, shade structures, toilets, generators, etc., all of which are costly to hire and reliant on large numbers of volunteers to set up and dismantle. I congratulate the Shire again on their vision and their confidence in the future of Serpentine Jarrahdale, and I urge all councillors to support the steps necessary to achieve a first-class equine venue which is sufficiently flexible to cater for the many other rural and semi-rural uses our community so desperately needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carla, for your statement. I'd now like to ask Mrs. Mary Harris to come forward and make her statement.
Thank you. My statement pertains to item 10.1.2, proposed minor amendments to LPP 1.5, exempt development. Thank you for the opportunity to address this important issue of exempting development applications for farm gate sales. Since 2019, I've been advocating for multiple forms of stacking of enterprises on farming properties in the SJ Shire that provides greater financial viability for farming properties by creating a diversity of income streams. Adding a farm gate stall to the mix of activities is one such means of creating diversity. It was also interesting to see an article in this week's press entitled "Landowners Diversify Their Income with Agritourism." I congratulate the Shire for having arrived at this decision. I say this with some degree of trepidation, though, as it has been at least 5 years since I broached this proposition with previous officers of the Shire. There are several matters within this short amendment that concern me. One, the description of the allowable floor area is confusing when expressed as 10 metres square. Two, all of the other conditions are also noted, especially those related to the classifications of roads that will not be exempt. These roads are South Western Highway, Thomas Road, Cargorich, King, Rowley, Hopeland, Hopkinson, Mundajong, Soldiers, Carnup, Nettleton Road, Kingsbury Drive and Jarrahdale Road. These are the roads that most businesses that would be interested in farm gate sales work on. This is problematic because, one, all roads mentioned are usually the roads that locals travel on and tourists use to access local attractions. Two, signage for farm gate sales is limited to the property on which the goods are for sale. Does this limit signage being used on other properties along that road that may be on the primary road? Is there a prohibition of other signs on South West Highway verge? There are multiple signs on the verge of South West Highway within the Shire already. My other main concern is whether all development applications for a farm gate stall on a primary road will be automatically forwarded to main roads, which involves further delay. Unfortunately, this LPP exemption from farm gate sales is sort of a Clayton's exemption for the majority of people who may be interested in having a farm gate stall. The Shire has a local food action plan that is designed to enhance access to local and fresh produce. The Shire also wishes to enhance its tourism opportunities. It also has a rural strategy that intends to enhance the rural character and tourism, maintain the integrity of landscapes and encourage craft and cottage industries. Very few of these objectives are going to be assisted by this particular exemption policy. Unfortunately, this new policy is going to miss the mark, as it stands, and does little to assist farm property owners increasing their income viability or assist with enhancing all the espoused desires of the SJ Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Harris, for your statement. Are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and make a statement? Thank you, Mrs Bond.
The council has suggested pulling apart...
Sorry, Mrs Bond, can you just for the recording, can you please state your name? I know I did call you Mrs Bond, can you please state your name and...
Mrs Bond.
Thank you.
Otherwise, the teddy bear's mother. A council has suggested pulling apart the heritage dairy on the corner of Cardup Siding and Hopkinson Road and rebuilding it elsewhere. Clearly she has no idea about this special dairy, nor does it seem she cares. I have photos of the internals and it cannot be pulled up and re-established anywhere else. I guess this will go the way another special property within the Shire went. Oh wait, we don't have a tip at this point, do we? As councillors, it is your responsibility to know the subject thoroughly before you vote on it. It's also your responsibility to not waste ratepayers' money on spurious incidentals. Remember, there are many ratepayers in financial situations that putting food on the table is a big deal, paying their mortgage or rent is even more devastating for some, and rate payments will cause more distress and financial burden to them. When you waste $40,000 on a useless talk fest about the tip, $22,000 on letting your hair down and having a laugh during workshops, many thousands of dollars on consultants because it is easier to pay someone else for answers than you doing your homework. Shame on your laziness. And think about the ratepayer for a change. As a ratepayer, I don't want my rates wasted on some of the frivolous matters I have seen them wasted on, and I and many other concerned ratepayers believe councillors should be extremely careful about wasting money and ignoring the ratepayer.
Thank you, Mrs Bond, for your statement. Are there any other statements that any members of the public would like to come forward and make? That being the case, public statement time is concluded at 7:19 p.m. The next agenda item is agenda item number 4, which is petitions and deputations, which we have received nil. Agenda item number 5 is the President's report. Good evening, elected members, residents and ratepayers, and welcome to the September 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. At the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, we're proud to have some of the best volunteers in the state. That's why Council and the Community is such a fantastic initiative. It gives us a chance to hear directly from our local community groups and clubs. Early this month, Council and members of the Shire Executive Team visited Darling Downs Equestrian Park for an update from the Residents Association. Their volunteers do an incredible job maintaining the park, and I'm proud the Shire supports their efforts. In partnership with Landcare Serpentine Jarrahdale, we recently worked with the Residents Association on a major restoration project planting over 600 native bushes and trees to rejuvenate the park. On the topic of community champions, nominations are now open for the Aspire Australia Day WA Community Citizen of the Year Awards. These awards recognise individuals who go the extra mile to improve our community. Nominations close on the 31st of October, with the awards presented to our Australia Day Citizenship and Awards ceremony on the 26th of January 2025. We're also gearing up for another exciting event season. Shire events are not only fun, they boost our local economy, create connections and celebrate our wonderful diversity. Last year's events like the Harmony Night Festival, Muddy Buddies and the Christmas Street Party brought thousands together. More information about our events program and how to nominate for the Citizenship Awards are available on the Shire's website. As a rapidly growing Shire, investing in our youth is key to our future. This year, we're funding a range of programs from leadership workshops to mental health support and recreational activities to help our young people thrive. One standout is the Growing Through IT program, a free initiative for 12 to 17-year-olds within our Shire, dealing with grief, loss and suicide, and that'll be held at our library. We're also committed to keeping our community safe. The Shire's new CCTV subsidy program offers eligible residents and businesses a one-off payment to help new or upgraded installations. This scheme will run until the 30th of June next year or until funding is exhausted. Waste has been a hot topic since the closure of the waste transfer station in October last year. Our online booking system is now helping residents manage hard waste safely while we work on a long-term solution. Engagement with our community in relation to future waste service options will commence on the 4th of October and run through until the 18th of November. Lastly, on behalf of the Shire, I'd like to express my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Karen Natalotto, who recently passed away. Karen, who ran All Things Craft and Dolls in Munijong, was a selfless and dedicated volunteer who made a lasting impact through her contributions to our community. She'll be sadly missed. May she rest in peace. The other thing I would let the members of the gallery be aware of, and it's hot off the press, Saturday night the Shire was invited to the UDIA, which is the Urban Development Industry Awards or Association Awards night, where the Shire with two other local governments were nominated to be the local government of the year. And I'm very proud to state that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale was the winner. So the Shire has been acknowledged as the Local Government Authority of the Year, which I'm particularly proud of. But as I said on the night at the Crown, it certainly isn't because of me as a Shire President, and it's behoving upon me to acknowledge the Director of Development Services, Mr Andrew Trosick, and his team, and I mean that from the CEO to all executive members of the management team for their excellent work that they've done. And it just shows you, as I said on Saturday night at the Crown, what a Shire can do, and they work collaboratively with the community and also with developers. So that is the official frame that we received. There's some information on the Shire's website and Facebook page, and also, I don't know if I can hold this up, it's quite heavy, also a very nice trophy that the Shire was presented with. So again, congratulations to the Shire and a sincere thank you and acknowledgement of the great work that all the executive here do, but particularly Andrew Trosick and his team. Well done. That brings us to agenda item number 6, which is declaration of elected members and officers' interest. Councillor Morgan Bias has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.4.1, Briggs Park Recreation Precinct Master Plan and Serpentine Jarrahdale Community Recreation Centre Expansion Concept Design. The nature of the interest of Councillor Bias is impartiality. The extent is that Councillor Bias is a candidate in the 2025 state election, and this item does pertain to advocacy at the state and federal elections. There are another 3 conflicts that I have received. The first one for agenda item 9.1 is Councillor Shane Mack. Agenda item 9.1 is notice of motion pertaining to the Lighthouse model. Councillor Mack has declared an impartiality interest in that item as he is a board member of a local primary school. The extent of his interest is that as chair of the board, he has been offered the opportunity to have input into the program, being the Lighthouse program. So Councillor Mack has declared impartiality interest in that item. The next item, the same agenda item, which is agenda item 9.1, that pertains to myself, President Coles. I also declare an impartiality interest in item 9.1, notice of motion pertaining to the Lighthouse program. Again, impartiality interest for myself being on the board of 2 schools within the Shire, and the extent of my interest is impartiality. The fourth conflict that has been received is from the Deputy Shire President, Councillor Tricia Duggan. She has declared an interest in agenda item 10.4.1, which is Briggs Park Recreation Precinct Master Plan. The nature of the interest is impartiality. The nature of the Deputy Shire President's interest is that she holds gym membership with the YMCA, who operate the site. The extent of her interest is access to gym facilities in their current form may be impacted based on tonight's decision. That brings us to agenda item number 7. Agenda item 7 is receipt of minutes of previous meetings. 7.1 is confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings, being the ordinary council meeting of the 19th of August 2024. Do I have a councillor who is happy to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Duggan, are you happy to second? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 8, which is receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meeting. 8.1 is audit, risk and governance meeting. Is there a councillor who is happy to move that motion regarding the minutes of the audit, risk and governance meeting? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 9. 9.1 is notice of motion Lighthouse model. That motion has been circulated by Councillor Mack. Councillor Mack, would you like to move that motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Should be up on the screen, which it is. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion as circulated? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to en bloc. As part of the Shire's efforts to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of meetings, tonight's meeting will include the opportunity for matters to be considered by Council en bloc. This means that a group of matters dealt with in multiple reports can be grouped together, considered and voted upon in a single motion. Matters that are not included in en bloc decisions are those which require absolute majority, matters to be determined behind closed doors, declared interests made in relation to the item, and deputations or statements that have been made in relation to that item. Officers have prepared a list of matters that meet this criteria. I will now read those report numbers and titles and invite any elected member to identify any matters that they wish to be removed from en bloc consideration. Removing a matter from en bloc consideration does not signify objection to a matter and does not require the matter to be debated. Removing a matter from en bloc simply means that the matter is to be considered separately. The matters that have been identified for consideration en bloc at tonight's meeting are as follows. 10.1.1, proposed road naming application associated with the Tonkin Highway Extension project. 10.1.3, which is the clay-based wetlands management plan released for public comment. 10.1.5, proposed Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendments 1427 and 1423, which pertains to North East Baldivis District Structure Plan, Precinct 1 and Precinct 2, request for comment. So that should be Precinct 1 and Precinct 2, 4 inclusive, requests for comment. 10.1.6 is draft scheme amendment for development contribution plans. 10.1.7 is the legal agreement to secure DCP contributions for DCA 1 in the form of a capital interest in land to deliver Orton Road upgrade, Western Australian Land Authority. 10.1.8, legal agreement to secure DCP contributions for DCA 1 in the form of a capital interest in land to deliver key road and public open space infrastructure, LWP Byford Syndicate Proprietary Limited. 10.3.1 is confirmation of payment of creditors. 10.3.2, monthly financial report. 10.3.4, travel and accommodation council policy. 10.4.4, award request for tender, RFT 082024, emergency services fleet, servicing and repairs. 10.5.1, payment direction deed for waste to energy processing. 10.5.2, minutes of the Rivers Regional Council Ordinary Council meeting 15th August 2023, and 10.5.3, charter for Regional Council subsidiary. Could councillors please indicate if they wish to remove any of the aforementioned reports from the matters to be considered en bloc? That being the case, can I have a councillor to move those aforementioned items be moved en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is a councillor happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is anyone opposed? The motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 10. 10.1 is Development Services Report. 10.1.1 is proposed road naming application associated with Tonkin Highway Extension Project. That has been moved en bloc. That takes to agenda item 10.1.2. 10.1.2 is proposed minor amendments to local planning policy 1.5, exempt development. Is there a councillor who would like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan.
Thanks, Mr President. I would actually like to move a procedural motion to defer this until the next council meeting so we can discuss the points that have been raised during our public statement time this evening, please.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini.
Mr President, can I just ask, so there's two options for deferral, Councillor Duggan. One is to do it as a procedural motion. The second is if you'd like that discussed somewhere, you might not do it as a procedural motion, you might do it as a normal motion and ask it to be brought to a PCF or to something else. So if it's a procedural motion, we just move to the next item of business and it comes back. If you want it to be discussed somewhere, then it's probably best to actually move a motion that asks it to be deferred and raised as a PCF topic, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Deputy President Duggan, what would you care to do?
Yes, I think raising as a notice of motion would probably be better, so it can be discussed at a PCF. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need a date on that, Mr CEO, or the next PCF?
We could just say the next PCF, so defer the matter to the next PCF.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mazzini, are you still happy to second that?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. We'll just wait for the minute secretary to...
Well, maybe we could just say be adjourned for discussion at the next policy concept forum. If you're happy with that, Councillor Duggan and Councillor Mazzini.
Thank you.
Mr CEO, do we need to put in there it needs to come back to our OCM, or is that enough to say that it's going to be discussed at a PCF?
Well, it's up to the movers and seconders, Mr President, I'd say, but I guess if we discussed it at a policy concept forum, we'd want to bring it back at some point in time, but the councils might want to do something after the discussion at the policy concept forum.
Councillor Duggan, are you happy with as it is?
If possible, can I have an addition that it is to be brought to the October OCM following the policy concept forum, please? Just so that then the members of the gallery get some conclusion on when this will come back. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Do you see any problems with that, Mr CEO?
The only policy concept forum is on the 7th of October, so that would just need to be scheduled on then, so it could make it back onto the ordinary council meeting for October.
Thank you, Mr CEO. And Councillor Mazzini, are you still happy to second? Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Duggan?
Yes, thank you, Mr President.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed to the motion? The motion is carried unanimously.
And can we just get a reason for that, please, Councillor Duggan?
Thank you, Mr CEO. If I can just say the reason is to consider issues brought forward by the members of the public during the public statement time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10.1.3, which was passed on block. Actually, for completeness, I'll say 10.1.3, clay-based wetlands management plan, release for public comment. That was passed on block. 10.1.4 is endorsement of revised climate change strategy and action plan. There is an alternate motion that has been circulated by Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Mazzini, do you want to move that alternate motion?
I do, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. It should be up on the screen. I'm just thinking, it is a fairly long alternate. Mr. CEO, is it appropriate that the council reads it all out, or are we happy for it to be taken as read on the screen?
Well, normally we do ask the elected members to read it out if you can, or you could just talk to the main points of it. It's up to you, Mr. President, really. It's your...
Yeah. Councillor Mazzini, would you like to maybe highlight the key points? Up to you whether you want to read the additions or just highlight the key points. It is obviously reflected on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. President. They are all pretty key. I apologise, I am going to read them all if that's okay with
that's
elected
fine.
members. Thank you. So, moving that, Council endorses the Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, subject to the following modifications. Point 1, the document being retitled to SJ Sustainable Development Strategy and Action Plan. Point 2, Action 1.3 being modified to state, establish an SJ Sustainable Development Working Group to explore opportunities and technology to identify low-cost, high-impact actions for climate change mitigation through carbon reduction. Point 3, Action 1.5 being modified to state a business case be presented to the 24-25 budget for Council to consider employing a full-time sustainability officer who will be responsible for delivering the SJ Sustainable Development Strategy and Action Plan, including the reporting of progress against actions. Point 4, Action 3.2 being modified to state that a vehicle transition plan being provided to Council within 12 months to demonstrate how all Shire provided work vehicles for staff, except those required for operational purpose, will become high efficiency hybrids or EVs by 2030. Point 5, Action 4.4 being modified to include 2 replacement measures of success as follows. Average annual red bin waste being reduced on a per household basis, and bin audits occurring every 2 years and showing a reduction in bin waste contamination. Point 6, Action 8.6 being modified to state support the implementation of federal and state government climate policy. Point 7, Action 8.7 being modified to include 2 replacement measures of success as follows. Average annual red bin waste being reduced on a per household basis. Bin audits occurring every 2 years and showing reduction in bin waste contamination. Just to confirm, that is similar action to point 5. Point 8, Action 11.8 being modified to state continue to maintain and update significant tree register with a particular focus on urban and rural tree canopy increase. Point 9, Action 11.10 being modified to state the Shire to plant and maintain a minimum of 100 new street trees annually, equally split between rural and urban areas of the Shire. Point 10, modifying Section 13 to include last dot point as undertaking community debriefing sessions where large sections of the community have been adversely impacted by either the direct hazard or cascading hazards resulting from a severe weather event, for example, a severe heat wave, direct hazard causing a serious bushfire followed by a widespread power outage, e.g. cascading hazards. And point 2 and 3 stay the same as the officer's recommendation in option 1.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone who is opposed to the motion? Okay.
Mr. President, I just have a couple of questions before deciding on the motion, if I may. I do have a few of them, if I can continue through them.
Certainly.
My first question is in relation to 1.5 being modified to present a business case to the 24-25 budget for Council. Am I wrong in saying we've already adopted the 24-25 budget, and how do we foresee that being presented? I
think that is a typographical error. Is that correct? Direct Development Services?
So that should read 24 for 25-26?
Are you happy for that to be amended as a mover?
I am. Thank you
Yeah,
for the
and
pick-up, Councillor Mack.
Seconder? No, thank you. Yes, Councillor Mack, do you have any other questions?
I do. There was an email that went out during the week just asking a couple of questions, and I just want to get a couple of points of clarification on some of the cost implications of this. And in that particular response to the question asked, it was mentioned that the cost would be about $116,000 per annum plus super plus minor equipment costs in reference to 1.5 being altered. What would we estimate the cost of super and the equipment cost to be to give us a total cost of putting on a new staff member?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mack. Director of Development Services, are you in a position to answer that, or should I go to Director of Development Services? Corporate Services.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mr. President. So, on a salary equivalent of 116, there's a 12% superannuation guarantee, desk and IT consumables are around $5,000. So the $5,000 is obviously an initial upfront cost. There is some replacement costs a few years down the line with IT equipment, but yeah, in terms of 12% of 116, 10% would be 10,006, so it would be about sort of just over $12,000 to $13,000 plus the $5,000, so a further $18,000 thereabouts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Do you have any other questions?
I do, and once again, it relates to the same line, the same responded email about the costings. In relation to Amendment to 3.2 and transitioning to hybrids and EVs by 2030, that there would be some capital cost, but there would also be an additional upfront setup cost that would be needed. With regards to this, I just had a couple of questions. Would staff members of the Shire be expected to pay for the electricity they use at home to charge, and who would pay for the infrastructure set up at their houses?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mack. Director of Development Service, are you able to provide an answer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question. I think that is all information we would need to research to look at in that action sort of references a plan being prepared. I think those plus many other questions would need to be thrashed out and looked at in that plan.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Mack, have you another question?
I do. I'll probably expect this to be the same answer then. I'm guessing that we would manage a situation where a member of... where we're setting ourselves a target to get our fleet to electric. What happens if we find ourselves with a staff member that doesn't have the capabilities of providing this infrastructure in their living situation, and we've got a target to make, to get to our fleet completely? Are we setting ourselves up to fail here? So how would we manage a situation where a staff member cannot have an electric vehicle because of their home living situations?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, Mr. CEO, are you happy to provide an answer?
Thank you, Mr. President. Happy to. I guess it talks about hybrids or EVs, and perhaps that, as the Director said, all those sort of issues would be worked out in that plan. Maybe the plan demonstrates it can't be by 2030, maybe it's 2035, maybe all those things get worked through. That would be my sort of approach. I think there are many issues to work through, and we could do that in the plan if that's what the Council resolved to do.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Do you have another question?
I do. It also come from the same email. It mentions that there was a recent bin audit done had a cost of $30,000. Can I just ask when and where that audit was done?
Thank you for the question. Director, Infrastructure Services, can you provide a response to that question, please?
Thank you for the question. That audit was done in last year in preparation for the FOGO report, which was presented to Council, I'm going to guess in May this year.
And was that Shire-wide?
It was targeted on 4 suburbs: Byford, Oakford, Jarrahdale and Munjong.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Mack, any other questions?
Just one last question, once again in reference to the same, with 11.10, the modifications to 11.10. In the same email, it states that each tree would cost around $1,000 to establish and water over a 2-year period. Of that $100,000 per annum program, what percentage of trees would we expect to survive, and where would they be planted, and what would happen if we didn't have an ideal or a suitable location for a particular period to plant those? Does it bank and roll over to the next year, or how would we manage that?
Thank you for the question. Councillor Mack, Director of Development Service, are you able to provide a response?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question. So if we were setting ourselves a KPI that council allocated funds to ensure that it was met, the expectation certainly from the executive, and I'm sure the organisation, would be that 100% of those trees would survive, given it's not a small investment in a tree of $1,000 to plant it and then maintain it. So we would be certainly expecting a 100% success rate. In terms of locations, unfortunately, we're spoilt for choice in this Shire, such is the situation that we have in our urban tree canopy challenges and our rural tree canopy challenges. The priorities would sort of be something which I would suspect, working with our infrastructure and our operations team, particularly focusing on maybe areas of high risk initially, so areas of Byford which we have noted as suffering a little bit from the risk of heat wave impact and whatnot, predominantly west of the rail line in the new urban areas.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Director. Any other questions, Councillor?
I do not.
That being the case, I'll call again. We've got a mover, we've got a second. Is there anyone opposed to the alternate motion?
Just a question, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes, Councillor Bishop.
Just from a Shire perspective, are there any foreseeable challenges to adopting an ambitious sustainability plan, or are we reasonably confident that any unviable actions in this proposed plan are able to be identified and amended in a timely manner to ensure that we do have a plan that's executable?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bishop. Director of Development Services, are you able to provide a response?
Yes, thank you for the question through you, Mr. President. The notion, I guess, of an action plan, there's nothing to say it can't be seeking to achieve outcomes. Outcomes just come with a cost, and that's probably the extent of the facts. If the allocation of monies can be made, I don't foresee any challenge in achieving the modified actions.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions, councillors? I'll call again. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Councillor Mack, I'm also opposed. Open debate. Councillor Mazzini, would you like to speak for?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to go on a climate change debate through this. I'm just going to talk through each of my points of change and why I've made the changes. The point 1 of the document being retitled is simply putting my personal views aside. It's a less divisive title. I think it's more inclusive of everything that the plan encompasses, and therefore that goes to points 2 and 3 as why we need to change the name of the officer and the name of the working group. In regards to the EV vehicles, I think we've discussed at our PCF at length that we're working towards something. It shouldn't be an if situation. The easiest way is to mandate the vehicles that we want to see our senior staff drive, which are EVs. As the Director has pointed out, this is a plan, and we can work out the nitty-gritty of the infrastructure required at those staff members' houses at a later date. Point 5 and 7 regarding the audits, the bin audits, that's in relation to education programs. So I think when I read those points initially, I didn't like the fact that the measure of success was simply implementing the programs. I think we need to see, there's no point in running a program that's going to cost money if we can't see any successful outcome out of it. Bin audits, yes, they're expensive, but the other option that I thought about was possibly a survey after the program to see if what the people had thought who had done the program and if they're going to change their behaviour. That's good and well if you do the survey one day after the program and say you're going to change your behaviour. And 2 years down the track, you're still putting the wrong thing in the wrong bin. I think it's quite important we actually have a more important measure like doing the bin audits. I'm not going to talk too much about the tree stuff. I think that was covered between Councillor Mack and the Director's comments there. Point 10 is probably the one that's most important to me. I think what I thought about there was the after effects of the Keysbrook fire and how we didn't initially have the debriefing session. I think that just putting it into the plan is quite important. Yes, the plan is going to cost money to implement, but doing the right thing costs money sometimes. So, yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Duggan, did you want to speak or reserve?
Thanks, Mr. President. I'll just commend Councillor Mazzini for her strong stand on the climate change strategy and reserve. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Mack, did you want to speak against the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And I too would like to commend Councillor Mazzini on what she's put forward. I certainly want to make it clear that I'm not against any of the climate change strategies. And that being said, I'd like to foreshadow that if this motion is lost, we'll return to the officer's original recommendation. I guess the reason for me that I want to speak against the alternate motion comes down to one factor, and that is rates. We have many residents that are doing it tough. We have just recently stated that we had one of the lowest rate increases going around at 2.9% when compared with our neighbouring councils. When we actually converted that back into actual dollars versus our average rates in the Shire, it was the third highest. Our Shire has a net income from rates of $30 million, and we are comparing ourselves with our neighbouring shires that have an income of around $90 million. We are not at that point just yet. We cannot continue to increase our rates on our residents for, this may be something that we need to do in the future, but it's not for right now. I would also like to point out that in our recent debate on rates, I mentioned that actions of councillors all through the year have a consequence on how much our rate increase will need to be. The 25-26 rates, when they come through to Serpentine Jarrahdale, are going to include an increase of the state government tax in our emergency services levy. Before we even start, rates are going to go up dramatically. Keep that in mind when we start thinking about all the extra additional costs we want to start to spend, and consider whether this is the right time to be doing it and when we prioritise doing these actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there any councillor like to speak for the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, from my perspective, we either have an ambitious strategy to address sustainability issues or we don't. We've heard from the Director tonight that when it comes to challenges and perhaps issues of finance, these are things that can be identified, and ultimately to Councillor Mack's point about increases in rates and the potential implications for our residents, these are things that can be fleshed out at budget time. I think we're better off being ambitious and looking to address these issues now and putting in the time to figure out what options are available to this Shire, what is deliverable and what isn't, and doing that now, then pushing it down into the future. So I'll support the motion simply from the perspective that if we don't assess these issues now, We're just kicking the can down the road, and at the end of the day, when it comes to money and setting rates and deciding whether these actions are deliverable, those conversations are ongoing. This isn't a commitment now. It is simply setting a plan, an ambitious one, but a plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak against the motion? I'll speak against it. And firstly, I'll echo the comments of other councillors, and that is I commend Councillor Mazzini for putting this motion together. This isn't a debate about climate change or anything to that extent. Perhaps it's not even a debate about us being ambitious. I think what this comes down to is one thing, and one thing only, and that is the almighty dollar. This is a motion that is going to cost a significant amount of money. $100,000 a year to plant trees, $120,000 to employ another member of staff. The only way, ladies and gentlemen, that we pay for that is to increase the rates. And it's really interesting when you sit at home and you look at stuff on Facebook and you cop criticisms from members of the public by putting up rates. I'm not going to now go into a debate about what we said back in September or July, I think, August even, when we adopted the rates. It is what it is. But suffice to say, I don't want to be part of a council that keeps putting rates up for what could be seen as ambition. The officer's recommendation is strong enough to allow us as a Shire to acknowledge the concerns of climate change. We are members of Switch Your Thinking, which also costs us a significant amount of money. That is where I believe we can be strategic, where we can be ambitious. Let's partner with our other neighbouring councils and cities such as Armidale and Gosnells and work with Switch Your Thinking. We are stronger as three than we are as one. The other concern I have is specifically in relation to the amended motion at paragraph 6 or point 6, and that is 8.6 being modified to state support the implementation of federal and state government climate policy. I think anyone would be living under a rock if they didn't understand or be aware of the concerns at the moment with climate change. There may well be a change of government federally. What does that mean? There's now look at nuclear power as a form of renewable power. Is that something that we're ignoring? Is it something that we're not going to look at with this alternate motion? It's really interesting when you look at the three tiers of government, local, state and federal, where we fit in. But I think for us as a local government to carte blanche say that we're going to adopt whatever the state and federal government does is a risk, it's a danger, and perhaps it is irresponsible in terms of money, us wasting, which is our ratepayers' money. I commend the motion and commend the councillor for putting the motion forward. However, I have concerns and I cannot support a motion where, again, we're using the ratepayers as a cash cow to fund something that objectively is going to cost probably $200,000 a year. My maths aren't that good. That's probably about a 0.5 to a 0.7% rate increase, simply for something that makes us feel good, to say that we want staff to drive electric vehicles, and for something that is above and beyond the remit of local government, and something that is above and beyond what already we have as a strategy that has been drafted by officers that I think is robust to see us forward. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for the motion? Councillor Mazzini, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that we've brought money into it, I will also go on to that point. This is going to cost us money up front, but it's going to save us in the long run.